Yesterday, the British Columbia provincial election officially kicked off, and thus far, Premier David Eby and his BC NDP have had a very distinct tone to their campaign. That tone is high-pitched whining. Not only did they go after the Conservative Party leader John Rustad for staging his first campaign press event at Crab Park in Vancouver in front of a homeless encampment to highlight the issues of homelessness and addiction, because apparently that's bad. It's not bad that the NDP have caused the problems that have exacerbated homelessness and addiction. It's just bad that John Rustad would point it out and make it the backdrop of his campaign to show how bad of a job that the NDP and David Eby have done. But they're also getting mad at the Conservatives for pointing out that the NDP have in fact rigged the financing rules for this election. The BC Conservatives 100% can win. There's a lot of momentum behind them. Main Street research in their last poll showed that 57% of people want a change in government. Only 28% feel comfortable with the BC NDP staying in power, and 15% are undecided. But even if they go 50-50 between wanting change and not wanting change, that's looking extremely good for the BC Conservatives. So the BC NDP posted this video to their social media yesterday, trying to compare John Rustad to Donald Trump for rightfully pointing out that the BC NDP have messed with the finance rules. And then I want to talk about what those specific finance rules are and some other things that the NDP are currently doing. So they post this on X, and it says, John Rustad sounds more like Trump every day. He is taking his pages out of the Trump playbook and only wants to help those who already have the most. That's a risk we can't afford. No, John's not trying to help those who already have the most. Frankly, there's not that many people who have much anymore in BC because of the NDP. I don't think that John Rustad is going to make his campaign based on only trying to win the less than 1% of people who are doing okay these days in BC in terms of better off than they were 4 years ago. Everyone's worse off. It's like what Margaret Thatcher said about the Labour Party in the 90s, is that they'd rather the poor be poorer as long as the rich were less rich. And because the Conservatives are trying to help everybody, that means they're also trying to help rich people, which means they're bad or something. But here's the video that went along with this post.
The press hates to write about it, but that election was rigged and it was stolen.
You know, it's interesting. The NDP have rigged the election rules.
I wonder where he got that turn of phrase from.
He got it from the truth of what's currently going on in BC. David Eby's utterly pathetic. Do you know what? And this is actually something I believe John Horgan originally did during his term that started in 2017. So you can also blame the BC Liberals and United, because they also ended up voting for this, and it didn't end up helping them that much. It's still advantaging the NDP in an unfair way, but the Conservatives can overcome. Michael Bloomberg in 2020, when he ran for the Democratic Party, if we're bringing up American political references like the NDP seem to want to, he spent like $1 billion on his campaign. The only place he won during the primary was American Samoa, because if people don't like you and they don't want you, they're not going to vote for you no matter how much money you spent. Tom Steyer learned the same lesson. Also a billionaire, spent like $100 million on his campaign. Nobody cares who Tom Steyer is still. Anyways, but so what the NDP have done, and this is why I urge you all in the description below, donate to the Abbotsford South EDA for the BC Conservatives. We're packaging up money and sending it out to other ridings where we have a good chance of winning. We have a lot of ridings we have a good chance of winning in. This just allows us to target it. So make sure at least donate $100. If you live in BC, you get 75% of it back in a tax credit. But we have to nickel and dime our way into a decent war chest, because the BC NDP have handed themselves $8 million in taxpayer money to run this campaign. They got 50% of their money from the 2020 campaign handed back to them, just ripped off a check from taxpayers and handed it back to them, because they get 50% of their campaign expenses back in every riding where they get more than 10% of the vote, which is every riding for the BC NDP. The BC Conservatives, because they were a party that only got 2% in the last election, because it wasn't really a real party at that point, it was just holding on to the name of the party that hadn't won a seat since the 70s. So they basically, I think, only got 1 seat or 2 seats where they got some of their small campaign expenses back. And then every party, and I've had people say, well, it's fair because everyone gets it. The BC NDP also gets around $2 for every vote they got in 2020 given to them every year. So if they got like a million and like 1.3 million votes or something like that, I'm not sure what the exact vote count was. They get $2 per vote given to them in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. That seems fair. But again, people are like, oh, but the BC Conservatives also got that $2. Okay, sure, idiot. That's totally the same thing of getting $2 for like maybe like 50,000 votes or something like that, compared to a million votes, to like 1.2 million votes. What are you talking about? It's obviously allowing bloated, unpopular governing parties to keep getting funding no matter how much they actually appeal to the general public. The BC Liberals / United got to basically limp along for another 2 years with fundraising from the taxpayer, and they somehow blew all that and people don't like them. So rest assured, the BC NDP is still extremely beatable, but they're going to make it so that they can get their vote out a little bit easier, that they can afford signs better, that they can run tons of ads, they can try and set the narrative. And this is obviously trying to rig the race. And they've made it so that you no longer can write a check to a campaign through your business, which was more ideal for many business owners because your business taxes tend to be pretty like staggeringly like crippling. So you'd rather like donate the money through the business than yourself. And then you can only donate up to $1,450. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but considering the fact that most people never donate to any party at all, like less than 5% of people, way less than that, will ever donate in an election cycle. And so when most people are then only really able, thanks to the NDP crippling people financially with their terrible economic management, maybe donate $20, $50, obviously it is going to make it very difficult to fundraise when you can't find some people who are very financially well off who can give you $5,000 or $7,000, or like most provinces, it's like $4,500 that you can give. That helps out a lot when you can gather 50 people in a room who can each give you $4,000 because they actually believe in your cause, and then you don't have to harass every single one of your supporters. Can you give me $50? Can you give me $100 when they can't afford groceries? Isn't that a fun concept? That the NDP gets money from taxpayers given to them to fund their campaign at the same time that they've made people so worse off that they can't actually even afford to donate to the opposition party. Whatever. But yeah, make sure you sign up. And for a lawn sign, make sure you donate to the BC Conservatives of whatever riding you live in, or donate to Abbotsford South here or the main party. Make sure we're funded. We can win. But anyways, now I want to move on to talking about the whining that went on about John Rustad announcement. I'm just going to highlight one post, but even with the stats on this post, you can tell a lot of people were complaining about this. And then I also want to go through another interview that the BC NDP are trying to make hay about. So this guy's like 246 comments, 232 retweets and quote tweets, 681 likes, 109,000 people saw this through impressions. So it's a big post, and other people made similar posts. It wasn't just quote tweets of this guy, Guy Filica. He's some harm reduction expert, harm reduction advocate, which means giving people more drugs, watching them poison themselves to death, and then Guy gets to go home feeling warm and fuzzy about himself because he stood up for harm reduction. It's terrible. But he posted, and so many other NDP activists and candidates posted stuff like this. I am disappointed that the Conservative Party BC leader, John Rustad, would use a homeless encampment to start their campaign. As a person who works hard at helping vulnerable people access harm reduction, recovery treatment, and housing services, this isn't helpful. BC Poly. You know what, dude? You know, pack sand. Pack sand. Is homelessness not an issue? Are there not homeless people? Is this not an epidemic right now in British Columbia? Addiction, homelessness, mental health issues that aren't being treated? If it is, why can't John Rustad use it as a backdrop? Oh, it's a serious issue, so don't talk about it, is really what they want to say. It makes us look bad. Stop talking about it. No, that's actually an incentive to talk about it more, because you guys are 100% in the wrong. That what you guys have done to BC is so bad that he can just go to a public park. John Rustad can go to a public park and have the image of the problem plastered behind him because of how bad a job. You can't do that in most other places in Canada. Just find a public park and have a giant homeless encampment behind you, because it's not that bad in those places. You'll have a few people camping out somewhere, but it's not literally tent cities that are popping up, which 13-year-olds are dying from using safe supply drugs and harm reduction kits that give people like safe snorting supplies and crack pipes. Guy can go pack sand. I hope that guy gets every bit of funding cut from him when the BC Conservatives win, because he's not helping anybody. He's helping people poison themselves like 13-year-old girls who the government cannot step in and forcefully detox from drugs because it's her own choice whether she does that or not, even though she can't drive a car, drink a beer, buy a pack of cigarettes, a lot of other things. Oh my goodness, this is the most frustrating election ever. We can win, but again, all these morons are going to make it very annoying to go through. But here is a BC NDP candidate, Brenda Bailey, and she is going after John Rusted for what he said in this podcast, apparently.
One of the things I will be doing on day one of this election is asking all of our candidates to take a pledge that their number one priority will always be their riding, speaking on behalf of the riding, and voting on behalf of the riding. And some of those things, are going to be big issues that are be controversial provincially, and I fully expect that there'll be free votes.
So on that, talking about free votes, which some may say is a very good democratic position, that you elect a representative and they actually represent you. Yes, they have party principles that they believe in because they ran for that party, but if the budget is not in favor of those constituents, if it would hurt them because there's just nothing in it for them, like let's say everyone in your constituency is paying taxes, but disproportionately you're getting absolutely none of that those tax dollars back in services within your riding, yeah, you could maybe vote against the budget. You could vote against a lot of things if it just does not serve the interests of the people who live in your area. It's the balance of power in a province. Whoa, what a concept. But this triggered one of the BC NDP candidates, and a lot of them. I'm only highlighting one of the people who posted this. Brenda Bailey says, John Rusted's admission that he's fine with his anti-choice, anti-reconciliation, anti-trans, and anti-science candidates who in this thread show you exactly who they are. Hard no, not in our BC. And you don't need to see the post that she posted along with it. I'm not like hiding them or anything. It's people like Brian Burgay in Vancouver Langara having opinions on Twitter 5 years ago, which I would say are just something that nobody would probably actually have a problem with. But, he's just posting like stuff in an edgy way 5 years ago. But the average person agrees with him. So it would be stuff about like spending money on Pride Progress flags on the side of fire trucks and how he thought it was a waste of taxpayer money. That's what the BC NDP have labeled anti-trans, to care about not wasting taxpayer dollars virtue signaling on public property. That's, what many people would say is a very moderate, like an issue that many moderates would even agree with. But whatever. And this has been throughout the campaign so far. The BC NDP just complaining that like the Conservatives have the audacity to compete against them. David Eby is the most entitled politician in Canada. Justin Trudeau actually won a leadership race to become the Liberal Party leader and set himself up to become the Prime Minister. I don't like Justin Trudeau at all. Terrible Prime Minister. At the same time, he was democratically elected by his own party to be the leader. David Eby, and it's a big tell from the party brass and the BC NDP, never even won a leadership race to replace John Horgan. He was going to have to compete against a couple other people, and they bullied them all out of the race because they didn't want to have any competition for David Eby because they know he sucks at campaigning. They know he's a fairly unlikable person. I didn't say it. The own party basically indicated it by claiming him as the leader because he is, even in the NDP's base terms, is a radical. He believes in safe supply. He doesn't want to fire Dr. Bonnie Henry after wanting to sell safe supply drugs in pharmacies. He is in favor of like safe injection sites. He's in favor of camps like tent cities remaining. He's in favor of SOGI 123 to teach gender theory in the classroom through an anti-bullying loophole. The man has never found an issue where he does not take the far left activist position on. Obviously, in this election, because he needs to be reelected, suddenly he's maybe a little bit, he's flirting with the idea that maybe he's in favor of involuntary care. Maybe he's flirting with the idea of being against the carbon tax. But whenever you actually see what he says, he basically says, I'm in favor of some involuntary care, sometimes in extremely limited circumstances, which will never be enforced, is his position. The carbon tax, I'm against the consumer carbon tax, so let's just add more carbon tax to producers, to large businesses, which is just the carbon tax being applied to consumers by another means, because You can't just apply higher cost to businesses and not have them raise prices. What are they? They're not a public service. They can't sell eggs. They can't sell. Well, actually, a lot of grocery stores do sell eggs for no profit because they make profit on other items. But like, there are many, like, the grocery stores are not just going to take no money home. The price gouging is not a problem in Canada. Yes, prices go up at the grocery store. That's the government's fault. That's mostly the federal government's fault for printing too much money, but also the province's fault because taxes lead to inflated prices. And BC is currently the highest tax jurisdiction in North America in terms of on an entire province or state level, because obviously you'll find like some microscopic city that like taxes are super high, you know, Beverly Hills or something like that. But still, like, taxes in BC are just so insane that there's an entire one half of young people are just thinking about leaving. 1/3 of people are thinking about leaving. 72,000 people left the province last year. It's that bad because you can't afford anything. More than half your paycheck just goes to the government every year in property taxes, income taxes, both provincial and federal, and corporate taxes. It's stupid to even live here. So if you live in BC, vote for the BC Conservatives. Do your part. Join a campaign. Volunteer. There's a volunteer sign-up link in the description below. Sign up to be a volunteer. Help out in some way. Donate. All that's good stuff. But anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Sorry if this ever always turns into a bit of a rant. But if you also want to support the show and you don't live in BC, where you should be donating to the BC Conservatives, if you're outside of BC, you can also donate to support the show. I have the legal fund, the Give, Send, Go link linked in the description below, as well as the pinned comment. We're going to win it in BC. Just going to take a little bit more elbow grease than money, since the BC NDP have monopolized all of the campaign funds towards themselves. See you guys later.